and whatnot. And then I had my dance community, which was another space of growth because we, all grew up in St. Louis. However, very different experiences because, I lived in North County, very low income, middle income area, and they grew up in a higher income area. And, St. Louis is extremely segregated. So our experiences were so different, yet we came together through dance and we're able to unite in that way through movement. But when I went to school, it was so different because, I didn't know many people there. I didn't know their experiences. Everyone came from so many different backgrounds, and also just the nature of Chicago. Everyone did so many amazing things. I was oh my God, I was extremely overwhelmed. And so I feel much of who my identity is and what I stand by and whatnot is rooted in my experiences at home, and home here in St. Louis shaped much of who I am. And so I miss that, I felt a lot I felt safe. I felt a lot of stability here in St. Louis. And so I think that, moving to Chicago, especially with the whole pandemic and everything, and last quarter being in Chicago, but not being allowed to, interact as many people or meet as many people, it definitely felt unstable, mental health, not great. And so I think that I miss that, being around people with the same or similar experiences, growing up in the same place, understanding different things just because it's a common knowledge in St. Louis, we all have similar experiences, we know different places, and then going to Chicago was very, very different. So I think that I missed the, commonality, the safety and security that I had, but miss it in a way that I'm allowing myself to change. It's not a bad thing. I think that I'm recognizing that, I have to reevaluate myself and realize that I can find safety in other spaces, and, what does safety mean and what does that stability mean? And so I get having to rework and reflect a lot. I think I've trying to do that a lot more once I came into school. But yeah, I think that I definitely missed some things from home for sure, just being in that same community and whatnot.
So in that case, it kind of has me thinking John, Hope, you both talked about how, I guess, identity can be born of space, and it's this argument of nature versus nurture. What really propels one's identity? Is it the environment? Is it something that we build up gradually? Is it just something that we, of our own accord, have complete and full agency over? And I feel even thinking about this notion of agency over the home, where you get to choose your friends, you can't necessarily choose your family. How do you see agency impacting your lives now? How has it helped you to identify your home or homes or feel at home?
It's so interesting, Dinah, when you talk about agency, because first of all, I love that because it's okay, it's our choice, again, in this world where I feel choices are constantly being made for us. It's outside of our hands. And it's it's making me think of so many people, my family members and themselves, of coming to a place where you feeling you're a local, you feeling this is home, but where locality is not privileged to you, which that could be citizenship, that could just be buying a home in a certain area, or trying to rent a place in a certain area, rent a place. Or so we're talking about that physical, tangible thing that you need to just truly be comfortable in a home. It's just so that privilege in this conversation is just so often not extended in the world that we live in right now, especially when we're thinking about how locality can be a privilege, not just this feeling and the emotions that come out of it that honestly I think are necessary. I think having community, whether it be through physical location, whether it be through social media, like we mentioned, identity, community in itself is, I think, something that has become so significant in the pandemic when, all we have is people, in a way that I think has become really true and really necessary. And that's why I'm so glad that I met y'all. We have this community here, because it's we're having this conversation right now, and it can be organic and it can be with us. But again, I'm privileged to this because I go to UChicago and I have the space and the network to have these conversations with you all that are kind of there. And that I think in itself is just something I'm thinking of right now, is the emotions that I want out of my community, or what I hope to get from my community is to share this can we just breathe? Can we take a moment? And that privilege, I mean, that's a privilege within itself. Just in my mind, at least.
Yeah, I love the thoughts and the points that you guys are bringing in, especially that discussion of like agency and getting to create your own community wherever you end up, and even in the places that you travel through on the way there. This is just kind of taking me back to one of the other symbolic responses to the word home, which in my case, honestly, the first word I thought of was isolated when I thought about my childhood home and the way that I was raised and the way that I grew up. That was the most prevalent. And I guess associated to that, you could say lonely. I always wanted to live like in one of those suburbs where you live a couple houses down from your best friend and everyone knows everyone. But yeah, it just didn't happen for me. So I, coming to the University of Chicago, was so excited to get that kind of experience. Because being isolated can kind of radicalize you in one way or another. Either it makes you scared to see what's out there, or it makes you excited to see the novelty of new places. I kind of fall into the second bucket. Came to Chicago from New York, also because I don't live in the city, and I felt like I lost such a great opportunity to know the city and an urban environment and a metropolitan area like the back of my hand. I now know Chicago and like the CTA infinitely better than I know any part of New York City. There's just so much, I guess, wanderlust in me. I want to feel like a local of so many places. But again, that is definitely a privilege. And if I end up being privileged enough to make that a reality, I would be so just grateful, as I am always. But that is kind of a dream of mine, I guess.
When you were talking about sort of the emotions that are attached to home for you, Daisy, that really resonated with me because I think growing up, I had a similar experience. Like I said, I grew up in apartments and stuff like that, which I loved, but at the same time, I didn't really have the same experiences as a lot of my peers because I went to a lot of PWIs growing up. So a lot of them had houses, or a lot of them lived close to each other, lived close to school, whereas I lived like in a different neighborhood, not really like with my main group of friends and things like that, which in a way was isolating, but also gave me a chance to like really be close with my sister, be close with my mom, and things like that. I think internally a lot of the feelings I have or had associated with home had to do with like anxiety or this like pressure to succeed, and things like that, because as a low-income student, as a Black student, there's a different set of expectations. Like, there's not as much room to mess up because of the way the world perceives you. And, your parents make a lot of sacrifices to ensure that you have as good of an education, as, like, quote-unquote normal of a childhood as possible. Even though it's not explicitly said, there's this sort of like sense of guilt or sense of repayment that you feel has to be made in order for, the sacrifices that your parents make or the environment that they built for you to be like worth something or to mean something. So I feel like there's just always been that pressure for me to succeed. And I've gotten used to being more okay with that, or sort of realizing that there's not always that expectation, but that's definitely something I experienced growing up, which is why like I wanted to experience something new, experience something outside of the environment that I grew up in Arizona, to be around more people who had the same perspective as me, because before that it was definitely a lot more of an isolating experience. Not being around a lot of Caribbeans, not being around a lot of other Black
Chase,
people,
and I agree,
not being around a lot of other queer people.
To succeed as Black lower-income students, you really have no room to make mistakes. And as we're on the topic of emotions and just associations, I find that when I think about home, I associate home with colors. I kind of have this weird sense of synesthesia where I link colors with memories. So I don't know if you've ever watched Ratatouille, But when Remy or one of the rats is like eating food, and then there's like yellow, and then there's like red and stuff, that's basically me, but with memories. So when I think about home and the memories associated with it, just a color box, not a color box, a crayon box of colors comes to my mind. That kind of makes a whole painting. And to me, with that discontinuity, that painting is finished. That painting that is my identity here at my home in Ohio, that one's finished. But as I go into Chicago and I make new experiences, my world is being colored with a whole new palette. And sometimes I like to come back, be grounded, and use my past painting as reference for the new painting I'm creating.
That was so beautifully said, John. And I think it also really got me thinking about, what happens when I have to let go of home. Like, I'm a third year in college now. I don't have that much left. And it'll be time to find a new home, and I feel like that also fills me with a lot of anxiety. And it's also very exciting, too, because it's like embarking on this totally new, totally, different journey, but also having to realize that with new experiences also comes new obstacles. But I really love like that color. I think thinking of it in color is also really cool and really exciting. And I feel like for me, like whenever I think of colors, I think of the most bright colors, which fill me with a sense of positivity and a sense of hopefulness for my future.
I love the mentioning of colors, and I think that was a great way to talk about that. And kind of going off of what Dinah said about, like, as things move forward, granted, I'm only in second year, I got some time. However, it just feels like things are going so fast, especially with the pandemic, we're, like, inside all the time. So just thinking about next moves has been, like, very scary because, like I said earlier, like, so much, like, I have a very odd memory. I remember, like, so many things. My sister was like, how do you remember this from our childhood? I was like, couldn't tell you. But I have so many memories that just, like, and it's, like, a little box, and I just, like, have so much tied to home. And I think, like, during the pandemic, when we were kicked off campus 2 years back in March, and I came home, I got more connected to home and understood that, like, home means so much more to me, especially family means so much more to me than I thought it ever did. Because, after high school, I was, like, ready to skedaddle on my way to Chicago, get out of St. Louis, whatnot. And then coming back, I realized, like, wow, like, I'm very much connected to home. But I think, recognizing that I don't have to get rid of that. Like, I can continue to carry that with me as I move, into Chicago, as I move from Chicago to a new place after graduation and whatnot. And that, like, these memories, these feelings, they never die. They're continuations, and I can carry them with me on forever. I don't know. It, like, allows me to feel content and that, like, I don't have to say goodbye to anything just yet. Just being able to, like, hold all those good feelings and good memories, and carry those on with me as I, like, grow into a different person, grow into new things, have new experiences and new opportunities.
Yeah, I can definitely sort of resonate with what you're saying, Hope, growing into new experiences. And you specifically talked about, like, new places and yet still, like, being able to go back and connect with your family and reach them on a deeper level as well. Even though in this sort of surreal experience of 2020, which we're now out of, we're recording this in 2021, first episode of 2021, sometimes it's bizarre to me that we used to go to concerts and shout in each other's faces and just breathe all over the place in class. Like, for some reason that sounds crazy, but we will reach a place, hopefully in the very near future, where we get to do that again. And, I just wanted to ask sort of about the places that we're reaching for, right? So how is the place that you return to at the end of the day different from that origin place that was made for you? But specifically, what is the place that you want to create for yourself? What is that locality that you want to belong to? Whether that is somewhere like a digital third space. I love that idea that Dinah brought in of digital third spaces. But yeah, what does that look like for all of you?